Another day, another episode of Rick's Horror Movie Review Show, Rick's Rated R Horror Movie Review Show, where we review all things related to horror. But today's episode, it's not a movie. We're continuing with our review of The Fall of the House of Usher, and I think this time, we might start to see scarier stuff than we've had in past episodes. I mean, every one of these episodes has had flashbacks and visions of demons. But it feels like it's definitely getting worse, at least from Roderick's perspective. Oh yeah, that Roderick, he's just continuing to say things that aren't really there, but that's because of the carousel. It's one of the side effects. But they're not all just visions though, right? There's something very important revealed about Verna in this episode. Shall we jump right into it then? Yeah, let's just do it. So there's a format to this show, just like there's a format to the show that we're watching. The episodes, they either sort of begin with a flashback or there's a flashback near the beginning of an episode. And this flashback is a little different than the flashbacks we've had in the past. We're familiar with Dupont, we're familiar with Roderick, we're familiar with his wife, Annabelle, and we're familiar with Rufus Greenwald, the CEO of Fortunato Pharmaceuticals, which, by the way, is not in this episode. So they changed that a little bit. So there's no scene with Griswold in his office this time around, which is, different, which is good. But I guess we're missing that from the show. It almost felt like a mainstay, the reenactment of the Griswold and one of the ushers and their conversations. I mean, yeah, but it's different, which is good. We should just, roll with the difference and keep going. Great. Now, there is a scene at Fortunato, and the reason for that is explained in the flashback to 1979. The reason for the visit to Fortunato this time around is to, Dupont and Roderick have agreed at the behest of Annabelle to start giving away information. But the only way to do that, because back in the olden days, 79 and 80 is not that long ago, is it? Relatively no. But on a grand universal scale, it's such an insignificant amount of time. But from a human perspective, from a human consciousness perspective, it's definitely a long time. Okay. Well, they decide that they're going to start to copy the files. And the only way to do that is, to go and actually grab the files. Not like files on a computer, but rather actual paper files. So, again, at the behest of Annabelle, Roderick decides that he's going to go down there to the mailroom or the storage facility in the Fortunato building and start copying stuff. And which is exactly what he does. And there's a nice little scene there. It's a little scary there where we open up with a dark corridor and a sanitation employee walking through the dark corridor. And there's a camera just off the right-hand side, and we're looking towards the back of the office building as the sanitation worker walks away from us, and suddenly he hears a noise. And there's a door. And so he doubles back and takes a closer look, putting his ear against the door. And he decides he's going in, breaking a rule of horror movies, definitely. You hear a noise, what do you do? Yeah, run the other way. That's right, you run the other way. You don't go see what that you don't go see what that noise is. Don't break the horror rules. We should really write a list of horror rules that should not be broken. And some that should be in case of emergency. That would be nice. We call it Rick's Horror Rules. Rick's Essential Rules to Horror Movies. The 10 Commandments of Horror Movies. Oh, I like that one. The 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not open a scary door. Yeah, thou shalt not open a scary door. Anyway, he proceeds with opening the door, and it's a dark room. I don't know what's in there. We don't know who's in there. And thankfully, is a light switch. Like, he turned the light switch on in the corridor too, so he could see the door before he opened it. But now he's in the room, and he immediately hits the switch, and the camera pans and it turns around, and there's no one there. But the star of this scene is the copy printer machine, which is what we're probably going to see of soon enough, and in fact we do, because he takes a gander for like 3 seconds and he's like, fuck it, there's nothing in here. Or he knows not to go in. He definitely did not break rule number 2 of horror movies, which is you hear a creepy noise, fine, you open the door, but you want to take a peek, just don't go in there. So he didn't break that rule, so that's good for him. Yeah, I mean, it definitely could have. What was the point though? Like, going in, it's just a bunch of files. What's he gonna find, you know? A rat or something like that. There was just no point. He's a smart character. I like this guy. Yeah, he's definitely a smart character. So we'll forgive him breaking rule number 1. Anyway, he closes the door, the lights shut off, and eventually we see a flashlight. And of course it's Roderick, and he is about to start copying all the files that he promised to pawn. They would use to expose Greenwald. I'm sorry, not Greenwald. Griswold, and the corruption that happens at Fortunato. I don't know that there's any more scenes back to 79. I think that's probably it. But yeah, let's move on with the story. And so now, just the name of this episode should give away who's going to go next. At this point, we have now only left Frederick and Goldbug. I'm sorry, not Goldbug. Yeah, I mean Tamerlane. Tamerlane, yes. Frederick, and Tamerlane were the only ones left, and they also happen to be the 2 firstborns, if I'm not mistaken. I actually don't know who's born first. Frederick is the oldest, I think, right? Because he's the heir to the throne. So it's Frederick and Tamerlane are the only ones left. Gone are Perry, gone are Camille, gone are Victorine, gone is Victorine, and gone is Leo. So all the bastard children, as they actually Victorine, yep, that's one. Also one of the bastard children, as they like to call each other. Because of this, Madeleine continues to not see who Verna really is. And Madeleine's a very cerebral character who probably doesn't believe in like superstitious stuff or any of that. It would make sense to me, being the computer scientist that she is, that she doesn't see Verna as anything else than, somebody who's psychopathic. I really don't know. I think you're just making up words there. Let's go with psychopathic. Okay. So Madeleine doesn't really see Verna as being some, mysterious evil entity. She just sees her as the child of one of Roderick's one-night stands who wants to take over the throne by killing off the remainder of his children. That's how she sees her. She doesn't think that, that Verna is anything else. And, so they game plan again. And they continue to try to figure out, who is this person? Who is she? Why is she killing everybody? Well, she wants to be the heir to the throne. And she expresses this to Roderick, and she expresses this to Hank Pym, and she wants her found. Thankfully, there's her file. Her file when she was, not when she was, but Victorine's medical file that belonged to Verna, obviously, was found at Victorine's residence when they were going and rummaging through her things after she committed suicide. And guess where that address was found to be? The one on her ID. At Roderick's house, but they didn't say that, which is really kind of weird. They should have recognized that address immediately, don't you think? I think I recognize. They would ring a bell, like certain addresses. Definitely certain cities, right? Like some city that you've lived in and somebody lives in a street nearby. The city will definitely ring a bell. Like if you just name a city that you lived in the past, you're like, oh, I lived in that city. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be like a particular address. Just the street name in a city is like, wow, I know that city. I know that street. I might not remember the exact numbers, but the name of the street is pretty well ingrained in our brain. Agree. So anyway, they sort of go investigate it, even though I found it was odd that nobody recognized that was one of, that was their childhood home. And it turns out that that's exactly the address that was on her ID, on Verna's ID, the medical file that was found in Victorine's house. Well, Hank Pym at this point is like, whoa, she's definitely trying to play us or something. She knows who you are. She knows where you live. And, but still, under the impression that she's just some psychopath that is off to kill everybody else. Not really some evil entity, right? But because of that, Hank continues to research. And in the flashbacks, actually in the flash forward scene, or in the future scene where it's Pym. I'm sorry, it's not Pym. It's Roderick, and it's Dubon, and they're actually discussing Hank, and the kind of person Hank Pym was, and he was off exploring half the world. He put law school on hold to see half the world. And you know what he discovered at the top of Antarctica? The link between worlds. The link where the living and the dead coexist on an island. And apparently Hank found this. Oh yeah, they did mention that, but I mean, does that go anywhere? Not yet. But at the very least, it gives you the perspective or the sense that Roderick, he might be a little superstitious. Maybe, But anyway, they continue their search for Verna. And we're just tying in this particular story, because obviously the main story, the main storyline here is going to be Tamerlane, but we're not going to get there just yet. I want to tie these loose ends for now. And so Hank is now researching Verna. He's doing the best they can online, CSI data. CSI. I mean, they might as well use a CSI database. They use FBI database, oh my God, I was going to say it again, CSI, not CSI, CIA. FBI, CIA, all the intelligence databases that he has access to, potentially every single one, not just here in the States, but all across the world. None of those, apparently, according to him, render any particular results that were meaningful or useful. If she is trying to be, sneaky, it would invite like a massive conspiracy across, because, and I'll reveal this just now, Hank starts showing pictures of Verna with important people. She shows him, or rather, he shows her with the Koch brothers. He shows hers with the Rockefellers. He shows hers with the founders of Monsanto. And all of these companies, huge companies in the United States, Rockefellers, oil tycoons, Koch brothers. I mean, I don't know who the Koch brothers, look them up. But the point here is that she has been involved with some of the most powerful people in this country for well over 100 years. And obviously that's impossible, considering she doesn't age and she doesn't change. So Roderick, I guess there's some hesitancy to believe that this is some evil entity. Definitely Madeline doesn't believe this. Madeline thinks this is, some conspiracy by somebody. But they continue. But at the very least, we now start to see who Verna really is, right? She's not some normal character. She's not like a psychopath out to get their money. This is on a different level. And there's a scene with Lenore and Frederick. And Lenore's such a funny character. She's just very nice and very quiet. Well, there's more than one scene. There's Lenore talking to her dad, and she's afraid for her safety. And Frederick's like super drugged up. Oh, don't you worry, Lenore. Everything will be fine. You don't have to worry. When I was, by the time I turned 30, I had 60 death threats. But you don't have to worry about that. Not just yet. I don't understand telling your daughter that that by the time he was 30, he started to get death threats. That's not exactly a reassuring thing to tell somebody, especially after her uncles and aunts are dying, don't you think? I mean, he's high all the time on cocaine now. So, I don't know that guy's really thinking very well, and he's just obsessed with his wife's potential infidelity. That's right. So there's the scene of Lenore finally being able to have a conversation with her mother, Morella. Was it Morella? I think so. And Morella is but finally able to communicate. And Lenore runs out of the room and tells her dad, who's bowling, and he doesn't really seem that excited. And she keeps asking where the doctors are. But this nefarious, by the way, I didn't mention this. He moved her out of the hospital. Froderick moved his wife out of the hospital, and that sort of makes sense to me, considering these are like, industry titans. What he said, that to be able to put together a bedroom with enough medical equipment that is probably much better staffed and much better prepared and technically and professionally than anything she could find at a hospital. I don't know. Makes sense to me considering who they are and their industry ties. So he brought his wife home, and this is where all this is happening. But another important scene here is he's been medicating her, and I think he's been using, I don't know, actually, was it N? It said N, didn't it? I think the bottle said N. So he blended some kind of powder with some liquid and then injected his wife in her IV, and I think it's paralyzing her. So it might be that same paralyzing dust that Victorine was using on the chimpanzees when they were experiencing that stuff earlier. And again, doing coke as he's doing all this stuff. So this guy's he's losing it. He's definitely addicted to coke now. And still not completely over the fact that his wife potentially cheated on him. We don't really know how long this is going on, if she potentially had other affairs, or if this is the first time. He couldn't believe it at first, right? But now he's sort of really paranoid about the entire affair. And of course, Lenore also visits Roderick, and Roderick is just having crazy visions. There was a scene of Roderick, and it's funny. Don't you think this is the way that they film scenes when people are falling off a ledge? Oh yeah, that definitely looks like it was when he's standing there and the background starts to change, and it looks like he's falling off the building, and then the camera rises over to the top. And he's being filmed from a top, and the background is changing, so it looks like it's falling. I think that's exactly how they film falling scenes in shows. But it was really cool to see that. It was actually a really interesting shot. One thing I haven't been mentioning, but in the scenes where every one of these characters are being killed, the music really becomes really enthralling and really accentuates these scenes. And you could see this later in the episode. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that part of the story. There's another scene, Juno from the Midnight Club, your favorite show. Oh, I love the Midnight Club. We don't talk about Juno much. She married Froderick, and the reason why she married Roderick was, as revealed earlier, she takes more Ligadone than anybody in the history of Ligadone has taken. And she was a drug addict, unfortunately, but she has this resistance to this drug. And it almost seems like Roderick married her out of convenience, to be able to market her and tell her, hey, my own wife is on more Ligadone than anybody ever, and look how fine and healthy she is. I feel like Roderick is playing that card, and that they've sort of alluded to it once or twice in the past. But we see a scene of Juno taking her medication, and she takes so much, and she's been wanting to come off of it. But and speaking of Juno, let's give her day. There's another scene of Juno and Tamerlane having a conversation at Juno's house, because Juno wakes up alone, and Tamerlane comes to the house to look for her father, Roderick, who again is not there because he stayed at his office after the debacle with Victorine. He had to take the heart mesh, and he went straight to his office, and he was bloodied, and that's where the Madeleine conversation is had about Bruno. But anyway, so it's Juno and Tamerlane, and Juno tells Tamerlane that, she really feels like this was going to be a family for her, considering she didn't really have a family. But everything is falling apart now with everybody dying. So I don't know how much of a family there is left for Juno, but you feel bad for Juno. She just seems like such a sweet character, and she's trying to be supportive, especially of Tamerlane. But yeah, I love that character, actually. I think it's a really underused. Maybe she'll be used more. There's a couple of episodes left. This is episode 6 of the Fall of the House of Usher. But anyway, one more scene that does not pertain to the main storyline of this episode, sort of the arcing storylines. But Madeleine continues, now finally showing, I think, her computer scientist to have an interest in developing some sort of AI so that it can become conscious. I think we saw a scene of her and Juno, and not Juno, of her and Lenore, Madeline and Lenore, and Madeline is asking Lenore to fill out a questionnaire for this, so that eventually she can map all of Lenore's consciousness into a system that essentially is a digital version of Lenore who thinks and feels. I don't think machines fail, but I mean that's definitely a conversation we should have an episode on. Can an AI fail? Yes, it will add it to the list of episodes that we must have. Can an AI fail? Anyway, that conversation is continued, and Madeline, well, not that particular conversation, but Madeline's interest and desire for developing the AI system is alluded to again in one scene. And again, I already mentioned that Pam uncovers the mysterious nature of Verna and how she has been seen somehow mysteriously, and not having aged a bit with important figures in the history of the United States. Okay, so now there was a scene earlier with Tamerlane and her husband, and they have now broken up. And Hammerlay's hallucinations continue to happen. She continues to fall asleep in the middle of conversations, in the middle of tasks, and she's just really losing it. There was a scene where she thought that she heard somebody in her apartment, and this is after her and Bill broke up. And there's another scene where she and Bill are having a conversation after Bill finds out that there's one more dead sibling, comes to visit her, and the scene is then talking about how they can put their problems aside for a second and just be on the same front. But as the conversation is being had, she loses consciousness. She asks him to leave his keys, and then when we resume a shot of who she was talking to, who is her husband, he's gone. So she's not only just falling asleep, she's losing consciousness, she's losing track of time, and she's making an effort to fall asleep because she continues to think her problem is that she's not sleeping enough, and it could be. Actually, at this point, that's probably the least of her problems. So now she starts to hallucinate Verna, but in a different way. The other ones have seen Verna as other characters, or other people, or just others, not themselves. Tamerlane, however, sees Verna as herself, and this started to happen when she saw, I think, when the whole fetish thing of her bringing over somebody for her to sleep with her husband, and she did such a good job that she liked it, right? But now that Verna's been preying on that. So much so that she has been placing herself in videos for her to see Verna, for her to see herself. For Verna to see. Oh, good luck. You're confused. Don't want to do your exercises. I don't want to do the exercises. We're gonna get to it. So Tamerlane is seeing Verna everywhere with her husband, and it led to a split up. But she continues to see now Verna as herself. In the mirror, there was a shot, I don't know if you remember this, there was a shot of her looking at a picture of her husband, and instead of it being Tamerlane, I don't know if you caught this, the reflection was Verna. And she continues to do this throughout this episode. And so Verna is taking the form and the shape of Tamerlane. And Tamerlane, I think, thinks that she's she just lacks sleep. So she takes sleeping medication and sleeping pills, but she still can't sleep well. So we get to the point where they're launching Goldbug. And if you don't remember what Goldbug is this lifestyle thing, and I don't entirely know what it is, but there's a presentation. And now we know that we know that Tamerlane is falling asleep, and somehow Verna's taking over and doing things as opposed to it being Tamerlane. So she takes could this be at last demonic possession? I don't really know what Verna is yet, though, right? The Raven in the story. But she's taken over Tamerlane in a very demonic, possessive kind of way, where Tamerlane blanks out and Verna continues to do things. This was evident again in the scene where Tamerlane starts to, jot notes for her presentation, her speech, and she does one thing. We look at a cup of coffee, and she falls asleep. All of a sudden, the coffee's gone, and all the work has been completed. So she's been doing this to Tamerlane. She sees herself as opposed to, or rather, she sees Verna as opposed to seeing herself. She saw, and we'll get to this during the presentation, there's a sex tape. But Tamerlane continues to see Verna. She doesn't see herself. And so she's taken over Tamerlane's body. And when Tamerlane comes through, she has visions of this Verna performing the acts that Tamerlane should be doing. And it just drives her nuts and it drives her insane. And then during her presentation, she sees Verna in the audience. And Juno's in the presentation too. And, from our perspective, from the audience perspective, from the viewer's perspective, and from Tamerlane's perspective, Verna's behind Juno. But Juno's such a fun character, such a fun actress. She keeps answering the questions that Tamerlane keeps throwing at her. It's like, what are you doing here? And Juno's like, well, I'm here to support you. But she wasn't really talking to Juno, right? She was talking to Tamerlane, to Verna, who is sitting behind Juno in the audience. I mean, that was real fun because that actress is so good and her comedic timing is fantastic. So when Tamerlane looks at that direction, even though she's looking behind Juno keeps thinking she's looking at her. And it got to the point where during this gold bug presentation and, they're showing off the lifestyle package that you receive personally tailored to you. I don't know. Juno opens up her box and she says, what'd she say? My box is shit. And I think she meant that her box had shit or something, right? But again, I think this might be Tamerlane's hallucinations because there's another scene where Juno opens up her box and it's just a bunch of goodies. I don't exactly know what this gold bug lifestyle thing is, to be honest. It's a box full of stuff. Expensive stuff. They mentioned that it's not like for everybody. Exclusive, super exclusive lifestyle for the exclusive elite. The lifestyle of the... Welcome to lifestyle of the rich and famous. Remember that guy on TV? I kind of remember something about the lifestyle of the rich and famous stuff. There was these videos in like the 80s and 90s of this guy who would like go around with rich people and they would show off their lifestyle. And I think gold bug thing is like a lifestyle thing that alludes to, being a super rich person. So I don't really understand what it is though. But it's for the ultra exclusive lifestyle of the rich and famous. Anyway, during the presentation, she sees a hallucination of Verna sleeping with Bill, and it drives her insane. So much so that she launches something in the direction of Verna, who again, in the audience, sitting behind Juno from Tamerlane's perspective. But this object that she launches hit... Oh, did she throw the mic stand? I think so, yeah. And it hits Juno right in the noggin. Bam! And it knocks Juno out, and Juno's on the floor. And obviously, the audience is just saying, well, Tamerlane Usher is done. She's just going wild and crazy and launching things at the audience. And Tamerlane leaves, and she rushes back home, where we enter the end game of this episode. She continues to see hallucinations. And even though Bill called her to ask how she was doing, she didn't answer the call. And Verna taunts her by telling her, you still have time to call him back. As she's walking away, again dressed in the same green outfit that Tamerlane was wearing during the presentation. And now Tamerlane grabs a pitch wood, one of those chimney devices. What's that called? I don't know. Fire pick. We'll go with fire pick. Tamerlane grabs the fire pick, and every time she sees a reflection in a mirror, it's not her she sees Verna. And so she smashes the mirror. And, Verna keeps taunting her. And one time she hits the mirror, she gets gashed right in the cheek. And we must mention that one of, as we saw, Roderick continues to see hallucinations of his jet children. There was one scene, and I'll say this quickly now, there was one scene of Tamerlane. Anyway, we're in her apartment, and she continues to see Verna, and Verna's taunting him. You know, Frederick, he's such a good man, and you let him go. And she smashes the window again, or rather the mirror, smashes the second mirror, and glass keeps falling towards her, and she steps on one, and of course, one of them cuts her on her foot, and she pulls it out. But Verna continues to taunt her, and now they're on their way into the room. And Tamerlane has a mirror for on the bed frame, and she smashes that one too. Now there's shards of glass on her bed everywhere. And now the final smash, and it's a beautiful shot. She sees Verna on the ceiling mirror that she has overlooking her bed, and Tamerlane jumps, and this is all in slow motion and done beautifully. And the music, as I mentioned, the music is phenomenal in this scene, and it's so well shot, and it's slow motion. And she jumps and has this fire pick in her hands and smashes the fire pick, the mirror overlooking her bed, and everything, including her and the shards of glass, are falling towards the bed. And this is all in super slow, high definition. And this shards of glass, and as Tamerlane falls, shards of glass get stuck. She gets stabbed with them on her back. And now we see an overhead shot of Tamerlane, and the glass is coming towards her. And there's nothing that she can do. She's now been stabbed by the glass on the bed, and now the oncoming glass is going to be the death nail in her coffin. And sure enough, a giant shard of glass penetrates her neck, and others penetrate other pieces of her body. And she's left there, dead. Tamerlane Usher is gone. At the end of it, that's the end game. In this episode, a little different than the other ones. I actually like this one. Well, not that I didn't like the other ones, but I feel like this is one of the best ones. So I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. 8.5. 8 out of 10. I feel like this is on par with one of the best ones that we've had. Good story. The hallucinations were good. Good acting. Good music. And funny too. A lot more Juno. I think we need more Juno, and hopefully, there's 2 more episodes left. We get more Juno in those last 2. Thanks again for joining us on Rick's Horror Movie Review Show. Again, this is episode 6 of the Fall of the House of Usher Goldbug. We'll catch you on the next one, and yeah.